Welcome back to Newsmax Now. I'm Miranda Kahn. Former presidential candidate Carly Fiorina throws her support behind Ted Cruz.
We're not going to beat Donald Trump by having leaders in our party tisk over our voters. We're going to have to beat Donald Trump at the ballot box. And the only guy who can beat Donald Trump is Ted Cruz.
Cruz's latest endorsement may give him a much-needed boost headed into the primary next week on March 15th. It's a biggie. Last night, he managed to win only one of the 4 states. That was Idaho. Donald Trump took the other 3. Yesterday, Cruz told voters he understands Trump's appeal.
You're angry. You're angry at Washington. You're angry at politicians who've lied to us. But here's the simple, undeniable truth. If you're frustrated with the corruption of Washington, you don't solve that problem by voting for someone who has been enmeshed in the Washington corruption for 40 years.
So can Cruz go the distance and actually defeat Trump? Let's see what our roundtable thinks.
And let's welcome them in. Joining us now, Jennifer Burke, co-founder and editor-in-chief of PolitiStick. We also have with us Bre Payton, staff writer for The Federalist. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So far, endorsements, they don't appear to be doing much.
Not for Marco Rubio,
This
anyway.
election cycle, yeah, good point. Is Carly Fiorina's endorsement of Ted Cruz any different, Bre?
I don't know, but what I do know is that it's good to keep Fiorina around on the campaign trail, especially in regards to when the goal is to beat Donald Trump. Carly Fiorina really gets under his skin and tends to ruffle him, as we saw in the past debates when they were both participating together. So I think it's good for Ted Cruz to have her with him to some extent on the campaign trail, hitting Donald Trump, which is what he really needs for victory at this point.
Do you agree, Jennifer?
I do. You know, Carly Fiorina, even though she ultimately ended up suspending her campaign, she was very well received. I mean, she got lots of praise at debates. She was forceful. She was specific in her ideas. And like Bre said, she did get under Donald Trump's skin, and she knows how to attack Hillary Clinton and bring that narrative better than a lot of people are doing so right now. So I think it is definitely a good get for Ted Cruz.
Do you think that helps maybe, though, because she's a woman?
Of course, I do think it helps. I was just thinking yesterday, driving home in my car,
right.
When is Carly Fiorina going to emerge again? I want to talk about Ted Cruz's performance, though, last night. At least according to an article in The Hill today, Ted Cruz was a loser last night. He did at least notch one win in Idaho, but he will be disappointed to not have Trump closer in Mississippi or anywhere else. Cruz isn't in the race to be second. His chances of becoming the GOP nominee ticked downward on Tuesday. Bre, do you agree that yesterday Ted Cruz became further away from the nomination?
Well, obviously, the delegate count, there's a bigger gap between the two candidates. But what I think is interesting is when you look at the number of delegates that Trump and Cruz have received since Super Tuesday, Donald Trump has only been able to lock up 40% of the delegates after Super Tuesday, whereas Cruz has been able to lock up 39%. So there's really only a 1% gap in terms of the delegates that they've been able to receive coming out of, or after, I should say, Super Tuesday. So they really aren't that far away from one another as one might think.
Yeah, and Jennifer, I was struck by what Ted Cruz told Megyn Kelly last night, saying, he'd been so strident about this broker convention, that it was the conspiracy of the Hollywood elite. But last night said, well, if it only comes down to 2 candidates, maybe it's possibly a good idea. I've been surprised, though. There hasn't been anybody else out there talking about the fact that these are the rules that all the candidates agreed to when they went in this race. If you don't get to 1237, you don't get the nomination automatically on the first ballot. Are you surprised that it's taken so long for someone like Ted Cruz to come out and say, hey, the rules are the rules, and we all agreed to these rules when we got in the race?
A little bit. We've had news of a possible broker convention even before many delegate count began to be racked up. So with Ted Cruz's surge, he would be the person that would stop Donald Trump from getting to that magical number that would usher in the brokered convention. I mean, John Kasich said the other day he thought it would be fun, but Ted Cruz could possibly bring in that reality.
But what other states does he need to win, Bre, in order to make that happen?
So Ted Cruz needs to do well. So coming up, the March 15th primaries, Ted Cruz needs to do well in states like North Carolina, and he needs to do well in Illinois and things like that. So yes, Ohio and yes, Florida are important, but all of the states are important. So even if Donald Trump does win Ohio and does win Florida, he's still beatable.
What do you guys think about Ted Cruz going down to Florida? We saw the Carly Fiorina soundbite there on the stump today. Ted Cruz down to Miami. He knows he can't win in Miami, but he's just trying to make things a little bit more difficult on Marco Rubio. What do you think about this strategy, Jennifer?
I heard, what was it, last week, that he was opening up 10 offices in Florida. I don't think it was a non-strategic decision to have the Carly Fiorina endorsement come into Florida. And it is, he said when asked whether or not to leave the race is every candidate's individual decision. But if Marco Rubio truly wants to stop Donald Trump, his best way to do it is to get out of the race, endorse Ted Cruz, and put, that power behind him, because right now it's statistically impossible for him to
you just don't see it happening.
Anywhere.
We'll talk a little bit more about Marco Rubio coming up. Guys, stick around. We got more to come here with a roundtable, but we're going to take a brief step away from politics for a second.
Yeah.
Get some laughs in. Time for this edition of Headlines and Punchlines.
It came out in the news that Donald Trump was once a producer of a Broadway show. Did you know that? Yeah, true story. He was a producer of a Broadway show. It was a revival of Les Miserables called The French Are Losers. Yeah, good show. I saw that show.
Senator Cruz, what's going to be good about the yoga match you got coming out?
Well, listen, I encourage everyone to go to our website, tedcruz.org, and get a Breathe yoga mat. It's very good for calming. If you find your head exploding, if you find yourself filled with rage and unable to control yourself, spend some time on the Breathe yoga mat, and it'll bring you to peace.
He is going to make a heck of a QVC host when he loses this election. One of the things revealed, because Hillary has her own scandal, one of the things revealed in Hillary Clinton's emails is that she doesn't know how to charge an iPad. Yeah. Today, Bill Clinton said, that's funny, she's really good at checking an iPad's browser history.
And we want to remind everyone to stay tuned to Newsmax TV all night tomorrow night. We're going to bring you live post-debate coverage. This will be critical. Marco Rubio trying to make one last stand up there on the stage. Can he convince the voters of Florida that he is their guy? You won't want to miss it. Of course, we'll have the best analysis immediately following the debate. And then on Saturday, we're going live from Miami, Battleground, Florida. 99 delegates up for grabs. We will be live at 8 a.m. Eastern. Miranda and I cannot wait to get up Saturday morning and tell you all about what's going to be happening. We're going to be joined by J.D. Hayworth and the rest of the Newsmax team. Stay tuned. We got more coming up here on Newsmax Now. We're coming back right after this. And welcome back to Newsmax Now. I'm John Bachman. Topping our headlines today, more trouble for Chipotle. The company closed one of its stores in Massachusetts after 4 employees called in sick. A top health official confirmed that one of the employees tested positive for the norovirus. 2 others were suspected of having that same disease. Women in New Hampshire can now bare their breasts and their nipples without fear of retribution. The State House rejected a bill that would have made it a misdemeanor for women to go topless. A victory for women there, I guess. The federal government wants to require the Ferguson Police Department to check out new hires against a database of officers who have been stripped of their badges in the past. The move comes in the wake of Michael Brown's death and an investigation by the Justice Department into that police department. North Korea's Kim Jong-un says the country has miniaturized nuclear warheads it can mount on ballistic missiles. These photos were released by the North Korean state media. They're pretty weird. Anyway, many experts are skeptical about the validity of the images. Caption contest in the future. Just released video shows a self-driving SUV striking the side of a bus. The collision happened on Valentine's Day in California. Google says it is the first time one of its prototype driverless cars has crashed.
Now back to politics. Marco Rubio did not have a good night last night, to say the least, but he's not letting that get him down. Instead, he's looking ahead to Florida.
Hey, I need everyone's vote right now, okay? Let's not get into that. I can't lose any votes. But I want you to know, you believed in me once. I am asking you to believe again. I need your help next Tuesday, so here we are. It always comes down to Florida, doesn't it?
Well, Marco Rubio's campaign is in a death spiral, and for ex-Jeb Bush backers and GOP elites, it's deja vu, according to Politico at least. The political site says, or points rather, that there are signs everywhere that Rubio's campaign is literally dying out. For instance, Rubio tried to rally supporters in Sarasota on Tuesday afternoon, but the venue, an airplane hangar, was only half full, with the campaign generously estimating as many as 1,000 had come. 4 years earlier, that same venue had hosted 3,000 for Newt Gingrich, and Florida wasn't his home state. And 3 months earlier, Trump drew upwards of 10,000 in that same city, filling an arena as thousands more overflowed into the streets. Politico also has an article about the folks funneling millions of dollars to TV airwaves, trying to stop Trump. For the second day in a row, we are telling you about a secret meeting. The purpose of this one, according to 3 sources involved in the planning to assess whether the multi-million-dollar offensive against Trump is working. It's not. And in the words of one, what will the path forward be?
And will there be a path forward? Now, if you listen to some of the pundits, we are looking at the end of Marco Rubio's political career. Is it? And if so, what does it mean for the rest of the GOP field, especially Trump and Cruz? And for more on this, let's bring back Bre Payton, staff writer at the Federalist, and Jennifer Burke, co-founder and editor-in-chief of PolitiStick. Thanks, guys, for sticking around.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start with you, Jennifer. John and I kind of go back and forth on this. I think this is really bad for Rubio if he does not win Florida when it comes to politics in general. I mean, I would think his Senate seat is no longer open. He's burned his bridges with the Bush family. I would say this does not look good for him. Like, he needs this more than anybody. But John says, give it a little while.
He's only 44 years old. It's definitely not good for him in the short term. But Jennifer, in the long term, this isn't the end for Marco Rubio. What say you?
Well, rumor has it that Rubio wants to someday run for governor. Whether or not that's true, I've heard many people discuss it. And if he can't win Florida, his home state, in a presidential primary, that won't bode well for him. And his problem, in the clip that you guys were playing, he said to the voters in Florida, you believed in me once before, I want you to believe in me again. The problem is they believed in him when he told them he would never support anything having to do with amnesty. And then he went to Washington, D.C., and he co-sponsored the Gang of Eight, which they tried to say had nothing to do with amnesty, but really it did. And the people in Florida know and remember that. That was not that long ago. Mm-hmm. And we said from the get-go that would hurt him, and it is.
So, Jennifer, Marco Rubio is not the Tea Party candidate he once was to you.
Well, no, I mean, he's not. When you campaign and say, I will never support amnesty, and then you go and a couple of years later do the exact opposite of what you promised the voters, how can the voters know that they can trust you? He hadn't even been that long to be corrupted. And we actually had an op-ed written by the woman who was believed to have done the first Tea Party rally in the state, in Washington and in the country, excoriating Marco Rubio, saying she didn't believe he was ever a Tea Party candidate. And she talks about the depth of his history towards illegal immigration and amnesty that goes far beyond the Gang of Eight. So right. Florida voters have a memory.
They're not buying it.
Bre, what do you think? Are Florida voters buying it?
I think that he should get out of the race before he becomes remembered as the spoiler candidate. I think Marco Rubio is very formidable, and I think he's very polished. And when you hear him speak, I think, you feel something that you don't feel with a lot of the other candidates. So I think he has a lot of potential, and I think he's a great candidate, just not this year. So I think he needs to get out before he spoils the race against Ted Cruz.
So do you think he should get out before Tuesday? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I think he should, because Florida, I don't think, is really the magic state that Ted Cruz needs in order to lock up and keep it away from Donald Trump, right? So I think that Donald Trump is slated to win Florida. He's ahead by something like 20 points according to the Real Clear Politics average. So I think he's going to win regardless of whether or not Rubio stays in or stays out, and he's going to get all those 99 delegates. But that's not the end of the world. Okay, so even if Donald Trump does win Florida and get all those 99 delegates, he still needs about 51% of all the remaining delegates in order to secure the nomination and get that magic number of 1,237 and, secure the nomination before the convention.
Well, there's some reports today that Jeb Bush is going to meet with Rubio, Kasich, and Cruz before tomorrow night's debate. No plans to meet with Donald Trump quite yet. This is all being reported by the New York Times. Bre, what do you think Jeb Bush is going to say to those three candidates?
Man, I'd love to be on the fly in the wall in that meeting, right?
I bet.
But I think I think probably the fact that Donald Trump is not going to be attending that meeting, it sounds to me from what I've heard and what you guys have told me, it sounds like it might be kind of like a strategy meeting for how to stop the Donald, or, you know, what the party should do kind of going forward in light of how weird this whole race has been. That would be my guess.
It seems like it might just backfire, though, Jennifer, just like the Mitt Romney thing has seemed to back. We showed that poll earlier from Matt Towery.
Right.
And the things that Mitt Romney is doing, the things that he is doing are just actually helping Donald Trump. And this might be the same thing with this Jeb Bush meeting. What do you think?
Well, what Mitt Romney said was good, just the messenger was all wrong, because he doesn't have a whole lot of credibility, since he did not put up the fight against Obama in 2012 that he did against his conservative opponents. But Jeb Bush behind the scenes having a meeting, who knows, maybe he's going to talk to Kasich and Rubio and say, you don't have a chance, now's the time to get out. And perhaps he's going to coalesce behind Ted Cruz, because like Bre said, Marco Rubio does not want to be known. This is what could really hurt his career, is if he becomes known as the spoiler candidate. There's no other reason for him to be in the race than he hopes to win his home state of Florida, and it's not going to do anything for him anyway.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to make that concession speech with maybe a third place finish, even, or a second place finish. You can't spin that one in your home state.
Yeah.
Bre, thanks so much for being with us. Also, Jennifer, great speaking with you guys, and look forward to having you back real soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next on Newsmax Now.
A closer look at the exit polls from last night's primaries and what they may reveal about the Republican candidates going into the general election. And still to come, for months, he called Ted Cruz a liar, but do the voters trust Donald Trump? We'll take a look at that when Newsmax Now continues.